Hi everyone, hope you're well. What we are going to discuss today is how to implement some of these ideas when you are short on time. This question was specifically asked by someone who coaches high school swimmers, and the question will be answered more or less in that context. However, I would also remind all of us that we are all short on time. There's never enough time to develop all these skills, and there's never enough time to do all the different types of training that we want. And so, no matter what type of situation you're in, you're always going to be limited by time. And so the same strategies that I'm going to talk about today apply to all of us, just in slightly different ways. From a big picture perspective, what needs to happen is there needs to be focus. You need to focus on what's most important, not just what's important, because there's going to be things that are important that you're not going to be able to focus on. You need to focus on what's most important. You only have so much time, so you've got to focus on what's going to give you the most return for the investment that you put in. And so you need to focus on the most important skills, and you need to focus on the most important types of training that are going to get you the results that you want in the least amount of time. You do not have time to start slow and ease your way into it. You don't have time to spend a month just working on drills. You got to get right into it. And as a result, because you don't have a lot of time, you need to start working on everything at once. You can't have this sequential plan where you focus on one thing at a time in order. Everything needs to be addressed at first. And this is where constraints can really help in, because they allow you to focus on both training and skill development at the same time. So let's go a little bit deeper on how to focus on what matters most. So the first thing to determine is what skills are the most important that your swimmers need to learn over the course of the season. That's ultimately going to be a personal decision, and it should be based on which skills improve speed the most, and then also which skills are pretty easy to develop. So some skills can improve swimming a lot, but they can be a little bit harder to develop, and some skills may not improve swimming quite as much, but they're really easy to develop, so it makes sense to focus on those. And the difference between those two categories may depend a lot on your personal expertise and your personal skill sets. I know there are some skills that I feel more comfortable developing than others, and so those are probably the ones that I would focus on personally, and that's going to depend on your skill set. Some things I would definitely consider are breathing, body position, creating propulsion with the upper body, underwaters, starts and turns. Those are usually areas where you can make a pretty big impact, and they have a pretty big impact on performance, and it doesn't take a ton of time to develop those skills. So those could be a great place to start. However, it's definitely going to be an individual decision based upon your skill sets and what your athletes need. You also have to figure out what matters most from a training standpoint. So there are a lot of different training systems. There's a lot of different training types. There's a lot of different things you could do. You can't do it all, so you're going to have to focus on what matters most. So there are three areas that I would place my focus from a training standpoint: aerobic development, speed development, and then practicing racing. And so the aerobic stuff doesn't need to be 3,000 meter sets. It can be all 25s and 50s. It can be a lot of different things. It's more just about developing the ability to repeat things. And so in a shortened season, that might look a little bit different, and you might choose to focus a little bit more on higher intensity fitness stuff because you don't have a lot of time, and that type of work can be a little bit more conducive to developing skills, and it's a little bit more relevant to racing. And so I would probably focus a little bit more on the higher intensity fitness stuff. So a little bit shorter distances, a little bit more rest, a little bit more intensity. They're not necessarily racing, it's still controlled, but that type of work might work a little bit better when you're really pressed for time. And speed development, they need to be swimming fast from day one, because if they're not, they're never going to be ready to swim fast. And so that's really important. The racing stuff is obviously where you put together the speed and the endurance. That stuff you can maybe wait a little bit to develop, but I wouldn't wait much more than a month. And mostly you only wait so that you can work on the speed and the endurance stuff a little bit more, and then you start the racing stuff. And then when you start, you can just start a little bit lighter and build into it. So rather than having 10 different training zones or 10 different types of training, just keep it real simple. They're either working on their fitness, they're working on their speed, or they're learning how to race. And those are the three areas that I would place the most focus on, because you know that those areas are ones that are going to improve performance, and you also keep it really simple for yourself, and you can work on them more frequently because there's only three different types of training that you're going to focus on. So we've talked about determining the most important skills to work on. We've talked about the most important types of training to focus on. Now we need to decide what type of strategies you're going to use to help swimmers learn skills. And again, you need to focus on the ones that you know how to use the best and are the most effective at helping swimmers learn the key skills. I tend to provide a lot of options so that coaches have a bunch of different tools at their disposal. However, now it's time to pick the ones that work the best for you and for the goals that you're trying to accomplish. So pick the ones that you feel comfortable using and you know can create change. And what you really want is to be able to create change as fast as possible. You don't have a lot of time, so you need to use the strategies that work really well, really quickly. And so the two that come to mind for me are one, using stroke counts, and then two, changing their hand sizes. So like closed fist and then wearing paddles upside down. Those type of strategies can be really effective for all the strokes. And then within the specific strokes, pick one or two drills that you really want to focus on and really work those hard. I wouldn't get much more complicated than that because again, when you keep it simple, it's easy to manage and you get more practice working on the things that really matter. So now you know the type of training you're going to do, you know the skills you're going to work on, and you know some of the strategies you're going to use to improve those skills. So now it comes down to writing effective practices. And so the most important thing is to have really clear goals about what you want to accomplish. So probably one type of training that you're going to focus on and one or two skills that you're going to focus on. And that needs to be crystal clear before you write the practice. And you probably want to write that out for the week. And that way you can make sure that you get in all of the different things you need to work on, the key skills and the key types of training. You have it mapped out so that you know that you're going to address them. And after you have those key focus points, you can add in some other stuff within the practice if you have time, but you got to make sure that the big picture, the most important stuff gets taken care of. And then if you want to add 5 or 10 minutes to another skill, that's fine. You just need to make sure that you'll have a clear goal of what you want to accomplish and then make sure that that goal gets accomplished. And if you have more time left over, great, take advantage of it. And that trickles down to the sets you write. Again, one focus. You got one type of training within a set and you got one skill that you want to really hammer. If you have more than that, it's not focused enough. You got to keep it super focused so that you know whatever you want to work on, you actually improve it. And that's super important. It's really easy to get distracted, but you got to stay focused and you got to get done what you want to get done. If there are other things that you think are important, write a different set. Make sure that you know what needs to happen, and more importantly, the swimmers know what needs to happen, and everyone will stay focused. Now, another point that might be a little bit contradictory, however, if it's important, you need to work on it every day. And so if you think underwaters are really important, that means you spend 5 minutes a day. I know you're limited for time. But you can find a way to get 5 minutes in. It doesn't have to be super high intensity. It could be part of the warm down. It just needs to be something that gets a little bit of work on all the things that are important. It could just be 2 to 3 minutes. It could be 5 minutes. It could be 10 minutes, depending on how long your practices are, but just find a touch of everything. And that way you keep working on the things that matter. And this is why you can't focus on a bunch of different stuff, because you can't do that. You can only consistently work on a small number of things. So you got to make sure you're clear about what those things are. Next big point is to get started fast. From day one, you're working on what matters and you're not holding back. There is no periodization plan when there's limited time and a short season. It's just meeting them where they're at and then going from there. And as they get better, you can make the skills more challenging, you can add speed, you can make the fitness work harder, and you can make the racing stuff harder. You just have to start where they're at and you just go. And you're working on everything from the beginning because you're not working on very much. You've kept things focused and you know you're working on important stuff and you know it's going to take time to develop those things. So start early, be aggressive, and then go. If you wait, it's going to be too late. It takes a long time to develop everything, and because you don't have a lot of time, you have to start right away. This is one of the biggest mistakes that people make, is that, for instance, they have a 12-week season, they're going to spend 4 weeks on drills, 4 weeks on aerobic work, and then they think they're going to do speed work and it's all going to come together. It's got to start from day one with everything, and you got to get rolling on that right away. You need to be aggressive from the beginning. Another key idea, do not waste any time. Every single piece of practice has to be focused on accomplishing 1 or 2 key goals that you've already outlined. And so that includes warm-up, that includes warm-down. Every single lap is an opportunity to get better. And so if you just give the kids a 500 easy warm-up or whatever, and there's no focus on any type of skill, that's 500 that's wasted. And even if you're only giving them 100 easy, that's 100 wasted. That could be 5 minutes, it could be 10 minutes, it could be whatever. And the same thing with warm down. You can keep your warm down short, which is fine too, especially when you're limited for time. However, even then, have a skill focus. Something as simple as Something as simple as 100 easy, but they spend a couple of seconds working on floating exercises between each 25 and then giving them a stroke count on the 25s during that 100 easy. That simple change takes 100 easy, where you're getting nothing from it, to getting something from it. And those little things add up over time. That's 2 or 3 minutes every single practice over the course of a 12-week season really starts to add up. And over the course of a year, if that's how long your training process is, that adds up a lot. So those two places are in particular, warm down and warm up, are really important opportunities to improve skills. And so you might not even want to use those terms. It's just practice is started and practice isn't over. The intensities can obviously be adjusted so that it's appropriate for the athletes at that point of the practice, but the skill stuff can still be really focused. Now, the value of constraints throughout this process is that it allows you to both train and teach at the same time, and that makes practice a lot more efficient. You can create sets that allow both to happen at the same time. That's why it's so important to have a skill goal and a training goal for every set. And then you write the set so that they're both accomplished at the same time. And if you're just doing drill work, you're not going to be able to do that. If you're just doing training, you're not going to be able to do that. But with some of the constraint ideas and some of the different strategies we've talked about in the past, that's how you can make that happen. And that makes practice a lot more efficient and a lot more effective. The key planning is first identifying what specific skills and what specific types of training you're going to work on in a week, and then in a practice, and then in a set. And then you use the best strategies you have to accomplish both at the same time. And that's where you can make up for not having a lot of time. It's having really clear goals and using really effective strategies to accomplish those goals. And that's the difference maker. It's all about being efficient and effective. And just because you're limited on time doesn't mean that the kids can't swim fast. If you're working on the skills that create speed and you're developing the fitness to execute those skills, kids can swim fast even on a limited amount of time. It's just a matter of being really clear on your goals, having really effective strategies to accomplish those goals, and then actually creating a plan that allows you to accomplish those goals by being really clear about what you're going to do and then being really clear about doing it. Hopefully that was helpful, and hopefully that helps everyone, because everyone is limited by time in some respect. Some of those limitations are more severe than others, but almost everyone wishes they had more time to get more done. You can use the same framework, regardless of how much time you have, to be clearer about what you want to accomplish, clearer about how you're going to do that in practice, and then be clearer about whether you executed it or not. So I hope that was helpful. If you have any follow-up questions, definitely let me know. As always, keep it simple.